Uh, Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. As always, a lot of people are interested in these fantastic presentations. I am Emmanuel Rota. I'm the director of the European Union Center with my new artisanal haircut. That is the result, of course, of our quarantine process. But today I'm very, very happy to be here to introduce Professor Judith Pinter, who is, of course, an associate of the European Union Center, as well as being an associate of our REES colleagues. And so we are very, very happy that we were first in line and we managed to steal her from our competition, friendly competition, and having her present today for us, although in close conjunction with our REES colleague. The title of today's presentation is Trolls at Play, Teaching Propaganda, Media Manipulation, and Election Interference through Role Play online. And of course, we are teaching, everybody's teaching online, but Professor Pinter has been among the first to start a process of self-reflection of what it means and how classes should be changed and how teaching a class that was long scheduled has to be transformed and reimagined to keep it interesting and relevant in the situation we are living. And because, of course, Professor Pinter is not just an expert on information technology and in question of online and gamification. I think that's a word, so much so that she's our campus expert on the Playful by Design initiative, an initiative we hope all we know about because it's such a great and fantastic initiative that she has been organizing and of course imagining from the beginning to the point that of course she received the very prestigious presidential award for this. And to put it forward, Professor Pinter is an expert on, I would say, perhaps I'm wrong and she can correct me, at least two different things. One is manipulation. She wrote books on hypnosis, so how to basically make people do things they are not inclined to do on their own, or they are kind of gently pushed to do. And of course, manipulation has been a big theme of her research since her passion for Eastern Europe. She started as an expert on the ex-Yugoslavia, and then she expanded in so many different areas. There is somebody with a mic on. Please, somebody. I'm told that there is a lot of return online, so please mute your microphone if you don't have to participate. So again, in addition to being a teaching associate professor of information sciences, Dr. Pinter is the director of Playful by Design, and as I was saying, she has been devoting a lot of her research on these questions, both teaching and manipulation online, and that became very, very handy to start this process of self-reflection on how teaching online works and how you can transform your class. I don't want to waste too much of your time with my introduction. I just want to say that Professor Pinter is going to present for about 45 minutes, and then she's kind enough to take questions from the audience, and I'm assured that there will be a lot of interesting questions. Please submit your questions through the chat, either privately to me or to everybody to see, and I will read them to Professor Pinter, who then will address the questions live. So without much further ado, I just want to remind you that there is also another event coming on Wednesday, organized by the European Union Center, with our colleague David O'Brien, who is going to present on the artistic representation of contagion and illness in the Napoleonic era. That's going to be on Wednesday at 4. You'll find all the information on our newly designed, fantastic website, the website of the European Union Center. But again, I'm already done with all this announcement. We're very, very proud to have Professor Judith Pinto with us today, and please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. That was really kind. I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to stop my video just so it's not a distraction. And then I'm going to ask your patience if while I'm sharing the screen, it gets a little chaotic. For a minute, there's a lot of moving parts and I don't want to give you too much whiplash. I'll do my best. So I assume you're still hearing me. Right, so this talk I would have given to the EUC conference, which was scheduled for this month and had to be canceled. And they contacted me and they said, would I be interested in giving it online? And obviously I was, because the topic really is, or changed to be, about how this particular course ended up going online with some difficulties. So this is what I'll be talking about the next 45 minutes. I'm going to start out a little bit talking about immersive learning on this campus, and as I do it in iFlex classrooms. And Ava Wolf, who is in charge of the iFlex classrooms across campus, pointed out to me that some people might not know what an iFlex classroom is. So I thought I'd start out by telling you a little bit about these classrooms and why I teach in them and what I teach in them. I taught this class, which is the subject of my talk today, this Global Informatics Seminar on Narrative AI, Media Manipulation, and Election Interference in an iFlex classroom. And why the fact that I did that then made it so challenging for me to have to take that class online. So that's basically where I'll be going during this talk today. So what's an iFlex classroom? So iFlex, the flex part is innovative, flexible learning experiences. That's how we get the iFlex. And there are several iFlex classrooms across campus. I've taught in 6 of them. I think I don't know if I still have the record for having taught in more than anybody else. Probably somebody has beat me by now. I've taught in the iFlex classroom in Animal Sciences Lab, in Education, in Psychology, and the 3 special classrooms that are in Armory itself. This one that you're looking at, this picture, is Armory 182, which is the one I'm going to be talking most about today. So this is a class that I taught in Armory 182. It was Global Health Governance for Global Studies. And you can see on that long view, it's a strange long room in the Armory, full of strange, wonderful furniture and environments. If it looks chaotic to you, that's very intentional. It's a design space. It's meant for classes with a lot of ideation going on. And so you see the students sitting on the floor and writing on the table. So all 3 of these pictures are in the same class, essentially the same moment. So you see the long view, and then you see some students sitting on the floor drawing on the table. And then way in the back on the left, you see some students writing on the board. And then this is a picture of their board. I need also your patience with my coughing. It's allergies. The mold count is high today, so I may be coughing a little bit through this talk. So this class, Global Health Governance, I also called it the 4 horses of the apocalypse, because death, destruction, doom, famine, plague, it was a romp through these. I'll talk a little bit more about what I did with the class a little later, but this is one of the main things you can do with an iFlex classroom is that you can shift your students to different environments, and in those environments, they can kind of colonize those spaces. And instead of bringing the students back together, what the rooms don't do very well is gather everybody together to lecture at them. So instead of having everybody gather back to sort of share back after they've been in their breakout groups, we travel through the classroom, sort of visiting the countries, like visiting the groups and seeing their spaces, which they've cultivated as their own. This next slide is Psych 11, and this was an introduction to Eastern Europe class, and you see that the students are dancing. These are 3 different dances. These are 3 different groups teaching dances from the region that they were studying. You see the screens on the walls so that the instructions for these dances could be played on all walls of the room, and everybody could dance. Now, I did used to make my students dance in ordinary classrooms. It's very difficult. You have to move. There's 50 people, and there were, in South Slavic, there were 50. There were never really more than 25 in Introduction to Eastern Europe. But still, it's a lot of desks to move, and you don't really have a big enough space to dance. I have had 50 students dancing the kolo, the ubiquitous Balkan dance, in a traditional space that was painful. So I love iFlix classrooms for being able to dance. So hang on, I didn't always teach through dancing and spaces and wandering around the classroom. I began as quite a traditional teacher. And when I first started teaching South Slavic and Eastern European history and culture courses, I was quite traditional. But I was frustrated with traditional methods. Teaching general education, you have students from all across campus, and when you're teaching sort of complex and violent histories, these are some images of Bosnia, for example. The fact that in Bosnia, you had Croatians, Bosnian Muslims, and Serbs fighting both for the partisans and fighting in fascist units with the Nazis in various ways, so that they were fighting each other, between each other, but also fighting within their own cultural groups. And what I discovered here on our campus, where we have a lot of heritage students from these regions, they would come in with stereotypes and leave with their stereotypes reinforced rather than challenged in the traditional methods of teaching, despite my attempts, and that other students coming in without stereotypes, left with stereotypes. I was very frustrated at not being able to get them to stop othering the Balkans and seeing it as this violent place which somehow had nothing to do with them. And then another problem which any faculty in the audience can relate to, how do you get them to read at all? So you're asking them to read in order to understand these complexities, and they're not reading as well as you want them to be reading in order to get what you want. So I puzzled over this for a couple of years as I struggled to teach these courses well, and I had a brainstorm, and this was it. I extracted the information I really wanted them to know, and I put them on the back of playing cards. And so instead of giving them study guides with the questions they should look at as they were reading the various texts, I had them, and I put these in order so that they could print these up, cut them out, have a stack of cards in front of them, and as they read, they could just write the answers to these cards in the back. And once they had these cards, there were so many things we could do with them. So you can think of this as a test bank, but what can one do with a test bank? With a set of questions that might be tested, but there are 10,000 things one can do with a deck of cards. So one of the things I did was to start doing whole classroom board game type sessions. I just pulled a piece of the rules from one of these games to put on the screen here. If you roll a 3, you've been attacked by the Holy Roman Empire if you're Slovenia, you've been attacked by Hungary if you're Croatia, you've been attacked by Byzantium if you're Macedonia, you've been attacked by Bulgaria if you're Bosnia, Venice if you're Montenegro, Bulgaria and Byzantium if you're Serbia. You have to fight, and you fight by answering questions, and then you lose money. And money was always glass tokens in little cloth bags, and they clanked, and students love getting money and they hate losing money. And this evolved over several years of learning how to do it correctly. After the first year, when I sort of tried it once, I realized that I could tell the whole history of Eastern Europe. That last game, these are both from the South Slavic. So I did this in both my Eastern Europe class and in my South Slavic cultures class, but we could actually walk them through changing boundaries and geographies and alliances of history by literally moving them from group to group as their membership in these groups changed. And I gradually added more role-playing like aspects to the course. I found that if they had a role and if that role had a name, they were much more engaged. So Imperial Game Master, Omnipotent Scorekeeper, more or less moral tax collector. So I had people in charge of the money and the stats and the this and the that and the asking of questions and the answering of questions. And it all ran really smoothly and was always lots of fun. Other things that happened with those cards is that I would give the students the option for a final project in the course in lieu of a term paper that they could create a game. And having this huge deck of cards, of several hundred cards, gave them a big boost in terms of mechanics. And yeah, I said we played with the cards. One of the things we did with the cards was sort them. We sorted them endlessly as another cognitive task. Now, this is something you absolutely cannot do with a test bank. So your test bank full of questions that they might be asked in a final exam, there's no cognitive task there other than memorizing and spitting back. But if your questions and if your facts are in a deck, you can sort that deck. You can think about the categories. You can think about what goes with other things, relationships between questions, and those relationships between questions lead quite naturally to sort of board game sort of challenges and other sorts of historical simulations. So some of these games that kids made for me through the years were more like simulations and some were more sort of light and fun. Okay, so speaking of light, I also started to add light role playing in groups where I wasn't using big board game-like activities. So on the left on the bottom there, oh, I guess I have a pointer. I can say these guys here. These were the students you saw earlier in Armory 182. These are the 4 Horses of the Apocalypse students. And one of the things I did, they all wrote a white paper, a policy paper, by the end of the semester on an area of the world and a kind of type of human tragedy most interesting to them. And instead of just having them write these papers and then, you know, maybe present them at the end of the year, we just said, make a character, and your character is going to write this white paper, and this character is from the region, and your character might be a scientist, might be a medical person, might be a parent, might be an activist, and it's up to you, politician. And then you write from that perspective. And at the end of the semester, we're going to have a budget meeting for a large international organization, and you're going to justify your proposal, and you're going to ask for money, and you're going to have to argue why, in terms of making our budget decisions and priorities, your project is more important than other people's project. So that added very light role play, which adds a tremendous amount of engagement to student experience. On the right, what you see there, and I get to show you another iFlex classroom. This is 432 in the Armory. And you see, this is the group representing Croatia, which is giving a presentation. This idea, it was completely their own, how to do this presentation. You can sort of see that on the walls, they've put a roaring fire up. So all the panels on the wall show a roaring fire, and they're sitting on the ground, and these guys are being children, and he's being an old man, and he is telling the lore of Croatia, and they're asking him questions. And this they came up with, you can see that they're engaged with it much more than they would be if they were passively standing, while each of them was sharing back what their group did. And I can tell you that I have not met a course topic yet, no matter how dry. They can't be made better through a kind of a narrative, immersive role play experience. And I take that as a challenge, and in question and answer, you want to throw a course at me and ask me what I would do, you know, feel free. Okay, so that brings us finally to the course this semester. So that gives you a background to say that I have been doing this for many years in many different courses on many different subjects. It wasn't like just one day I decided I'm going to do something really complicated and ambitious in this course. So I came to this also after spending many years working with the fine folks at CITL, and talking and thinking and working with groups of people on how to use playful pedagogies, or gameful pedagogies as I prefer to call them, to improve teaching across our campus when I decided to develop this particular course. So I used this book. So one question I always get when I show my students having fun is, are your students learning anything? Are you losing anything in terms of rigor when you add these playful elements? And absolutely not. As my students can tell you, there's several in the room, I work them very, very hard. This is one text we used in the course. It's an undergraduate level book. The graduate students were a little frustrated with it because the chapters were not written by area experts. But it was a survey of computational propaganda as it's been used across the world in a sort of a comparative study. So it looked at Ukraine, Poland, Germany, Canada, the United States, Russia, etc. And so while we were doing those comparative cases, the students chose topics that they wanted to follow in a series of blogs that they wrote during the year. And these have turned out to be truly remarkable, partly because the students, which is an amazing crop of amazing students, but secondly because of this historical moment. We're in the middle of a really unprecedented election season, with this really unprecedented pandemic event occurring. And my students have been watching the media. So for 4 months, they've been tracking the media, looking with quite expert eyes at issues in a variety of places around the world. You can read from the headlines here that they've got Hungary and Germany and Russia here. And if either, now that I have some Reese and EUC people here, if you have any money for graduate students this summer, I would love to have my graduate students working on making these blogs sort of publicly available, because as data, they're quite interesting because of what they were watching. So I want to say that they've been doing this all semester while we were doing some other things as well. So this is the other text that we used, which is also a little bit of a mediocre text, but it did what I needed it to do, which was it gave us my style test bank, which is several hundred theorists, theories, and strategies of rhetorical manipulation, logical fallacies, that we could extract out of this text as interesting and useful to us, and then of course turn them into something gameful, which I was sort of anticipating, trolls at play. So these were plans that I made while we were in the classroom, in the iFlex classroom, Armory 182. I wanted to use everything that the Armory could give me to take this information. Oh, here it is. This is the card I was looking for. To take that non-text test bank and turn it into a set of cards, which again could be played with and sorted in a variety of ways. So we had theories, we had theorists, we had rhetorical strategies that we worked with in a variety of ways. Oh, and let me just go back really quick. Oops. Oops, now I'm going absolutely the wrong way. To say that this, that we made a website where all of these terms, we came to consensus about what the correct understanding, definition, or answer was to all of these when the students worked with them. So it was not a wild, wild west of meaning necessarily. It was a wild, wild west in other ways, however. So what we did was we rolled a world. Since in my South Slavic and Eastern European classes, the board that we dealt with was the historical maps of Europe. And I wanted to create a fake world, roll a new world. And my reason for doing that was that I thought that some of the issues going on in the world today are fraught, emotionally fraught. I have students from these regions. Things are very emotional, very personal, and I wanted them to be evil, basically. So I wanted them to become experts in disinformation. And I thought it would be easier to do that, to explore these strategies of disinformation in a pretend world. So we rolled it. We literally rolled dice. We determined what we wanted to put in our worlds, and then we charted what we got. So the students in the groups named their countries. The 5 countries they created were Coraco, Dodo, Ramalia, Unia, and Valance. And here are the raw resources that they had and the industries that developed with those resources. And interestingly enough, there were also mismatches between resources and industries, so that was interesting. At the bottom, you have some other banking information, trading units. I also had them make money through doing some homework assignments in which they competed against each other. I don't do that sort of straight up compete with other groups for points thing very often, what is sort of more traditionally seen as a gamification. I don't do that so much, but I did do it to raise some money. And then we determined trade rivalries and trade monopolies. And then we just really stared at this data in the context of other information they had rolled for their countries. So we knew their population, the kind of a government that was in power, what their opposition was, so those were fun, what was opposing what, their inequalities of life, their freedoms, their ethnic situation, their technological level, and all these things. And then we started creating cards. So they created hundreds, literally hundreds of event cards, which were going to affect life on the planet, which they named Lurth, the planet Lurth. So we anticipated, these cards don't yet have the consequences, but these cards had events which were going to affect our countries and give us material to work with in attacking each other's countries in a variety of ways. So here is the students creating the actual map of their countries. And they're putting on here their industries. So they're sort of mapping their geography to their industries and really creating the resource planet as well, and also looking at various vulnerabilities. Okay, so that was amazing. And as we zoom toward finally being able to play, this was the sort of exciting culmination. In Armory 182, you have these years in which these walls, they're doors, walls, years, walls, doors. These doors for a closet, what you can't see here is that there are actually doors behind, so you have more than 4 panels. You can actually roll these and get like 6 panels, and it's the most wonderful thing to ideate on. You can have layers of ideas and networks and maps. And so, but what we put here were, we combined all the maps of their countries into one amazing geography. Dodo, which is an island country, is off here. You can't see it very well. Unia, Valance, Coraco, Ramalia, and Dodo, the island, a set of islands over here. And we were so excited to play. Behind this door are big, huge pieces of paper in which we moved this map to paper, which would have been boards, and we started to make tokens and things that would have been used on the boards. We already had cards, and we were going to, in this classroom, have these big board games, and we were going to have this wonderful romping play. And then we were told we had to shut down. We had to go home. I went home without the maps. The maps are still in the closet. I haven't seen them since before spring break. The maps and the tokens, and all I can say is, thank God I brought the cards home. I had all the card decks with me, but not the maps. And I had a week. I had spring break to try to figure out how I was going to take this immersive, embodied, incredibly sort of physical course. And I haven't really even talked to you about the role play parts of it, which involved the diplomats getting together to talk and the spies sneaking around the classroom, and a lot of like really active in-person role play, what I was going to do to put this online. So that's really what I'm here to tell you about, kind of what I did. And it's complicated, but it was fun to unravel. It was sort of a kind of a big puzzle. So I had that, and then I turned the map into this. So to make this map of the planet Earth, I use this wonderful website called incarnate.com. And now you're all gonna go home after this, or you are at home. You're gonna go into the next room. No, actually, you're not even gonna go to the next room. You're just going to navigate to this website and start making maps. It makes incredibly beautiful maps. So I made planet Earth, and then it also has a variety of little things you can put on your maps. And I was actually able to do what we would have done on the paper board. I was able to do it on this virtual board. These little women figures, this is fashion, the fashion industry, textile industry, which was also fashion, where Dodo leads and Unia was the second. You see oil rigs. You see the windmills as green energy. We have coal here, we have mining, and problematically, which I'll get to in a minute, we have food, trade food up here. So I was able to make that, but then the question was, it was static. It was just a JPEG. Right? It was just a JPEG image. It's not a board. And I looked at some of the like, put your board game online applications that were out there, and the learning curve was too high and it wasn't quite right, and I didn't have full control. I wouldn't have had control of the game or how it worked. So I opted for a low-tech solution. So this is my tech solution number 2, was Photoshop. And I put the sprites as layers, and I could turn them on or off. And as layers in Photoshop, I could just move them around the map. And so here you see the tokens for the various countries. There, I moved this one so you could see that it's on its dock. So they're on their docks and they're ready to move. And here's the grid, and the game was ready to play. Okay, but where is the manipulation? Where is the media manipulation? Where is the election interference? Well, here's the next online tool that I used. I used our very own web.illinois. I made a WordPress site using the plugin BuddyPress, which allowed me to create a fake social media website. So if you read the little letter that was on the opening screen before this talk started, it was a greeting from the Orphan General. I am the Orphan General. That's my role in this game, in this world. I run the United Earthen Nations. The Orphan General is an orphan whose parents died at sea. That's how they decide that the Orphan General, a little myth of the world, and I'm supposedly objective. And I put up, up here it says where I live, United Earthen Nations Media Affairs Office, 7th hut west of the Big Coconut Tree, Western Toe of Eastern Foot Island, Kingdom of Dodo, is where I live. And this social media site, which credibly works just like a social media site, the students started making groups. So these are discussion groups. You can join the groups. And within those groups, you can post, you can like, you can share, all that stuff. So we had a Lurthen social media site that went with the game. And then the groups started creating content for the social media site. So this initial one was an assignment, but after that, I didn't have to tell them what to do. So initially their assignment was to make a PSA for their country that touted their industries, that combined their national identity with their industries, and a meme from their opposition. And the reason for doing this up front was so that the other countries had a head start in knowing how to attack each other. So what are their strengths? How is each country branding itself, which is of course a rhetorical strategy of manipulation, branding coming from advertising. And then how might they be attacked? So here you sort of see it in a glance. And when I had this PowerPoint running on my desktop, these videos ran. And when I just tested it on my laptop here, they didn't work. I don't think they're going to. I don't think this is going to run. No, but I can. I think I can run it from here, which is our
prepared
Wiki
to
site.
protect our citizens and will go to great lengths to keep all of them safe.
Hang on, let me start
We
that
are
over.
always prepared to protect our citizens and will go to great lengths to keep all of them safe.
We always feel safe in Valance because we know our government is watching us around the clock.
Our thriving industries give us job security. We use our diversity as an opportunity to grow together as Valencians.
Our men and women from A to V live equal and free. Valance, we are mightier together.
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 That didn't turn out to be true, actually, as you'll see. All right, where did my PowerPoint go? There I am. I'm not going to be able to show you all of these, unfortunately, unless you ask to see them later in the, I don't have time, in the Q&A. If you want to see any of the other PSAs, I'm happy to show you. So here's Ramalia, and it advertises itself. I don't think this is going to run either. They were all embedded, and now they're not working, sadly. And so their opposition is taking on their dependence on coal, though they sell themselves. The #1 in tourism is Ramalia. They're sort of alpine to the sea, a very beautiful area. Here is Unia, and this is a funny trolling meme. No politician can unify people in the way that the Unia video seems to have united every single person against it. It's a pretty smarmy little thing. And again, some self-trolling there from Unia. Oh, I can try. No, I don't think so. Okay. And Dodo, this is the island community, and they're trolling. This one I think will work. Just the YouTube videos stopped running.
Why would you want to visit this place when you can come visit Dodo? Our beaches are clean and our people are friendly. Come to Dodo, you'll never want to leave. We have equality and you'll enjoy all the rights of citizenship from day one. You can travel from any coast of Greater Lurth to enjoy the beaches of Dodo. Cheers! I'm the Queen of Dodo and I approve this message.
This message is brought to you by the people of Dodo.
Okay. I keep losing my PowerPoint. There we are. So they made these PSAs, and then they were let loose. Oh, right. One more. Sorry. I forgot about Coraco. Coraco is run by a pharmaceutical company. Interestingly enough, its government is run by a pharmaceutical company, and so of course they're also dinging that. All right. So the next resource that I had for taking this course online was Illinois Wiki. So the course Wiki, which existed prior to going online, was how we communicated with one another on everything important we needed to know. And so I was able to set up the game through the Wiki before we actually were Zooming together to play. And so here are sort of roles that I gave, and these roles, which were useful in the classroom, became even more important online. So we're all gonna be in a Zoom room together, but I needed them to act as groups, in groups, but they weren't gonna be able to break out because I was sharing a screen, we had multiple screens to look at. They were not gonna be able to break out to speak together. They were going to have to use, almost all of them used GroupMe, some of them used chat. So they were going to be chatting together in their groups. So I needed people, the chief decider, somebody's just going to have to decide. It's going to have to move fast. They're going to have to make a move. They had a public relations person who was going to speak. The media maven, this is somebody who was immediately posting on the MyLearth site after any event happened in the game. I had to thank you, Joe. If Joe's in the room, he did an amazing job as the banker, so I didn't have to change any statistics during gameplay. I could just worry about the board. We had the diplomats who had one chat together making legal deals. We had the spies making illegal covert deals all at the same time. On the wiki, they had secret pages where they could get messages from their handlers. So they were all cultivated to be agents of disinformation. They were contacted by the ministers of disinformation by their countries, and they were asked to create a guide to disinformation tactics to be shared with other cells. And then they were asked specifically to create disinformation campaigns, comprehensive disinformation campaigns towards other countries, which were strategic for their own country's industry and political well-being. So I had that static e-page. I mean, not static completely, but I had the wiki to work with as well. So then you can't believe with what terror I faced the first class online on Zoom after spring break. You can see I put a typo here in the top line. I was typing so fast and so nervously, where I set up one set of instructions when we remembered that we didn't know if Zoom would work or if Zoom would crash based on the load of people who are going to be wanting to get in there. My own class had only 22 people, so we weren't going to sort of crash it ourselves, but I was worried. So I had a plan to do it asynchronously on the wiki, still using sort of the online pages and then just having it go much more slowly. But luckily we were able quite easily to do it with Zoom and GroupMe. It worked brilliantly well. It moved smoothly, and we ended up playing 7 class sessions. We played the game this semester. So this is on the wiki. This is the page that Joe was constantly updating. We had what happened in each turn. We determined the term order based on how much money they had. They could either take a world event card, which I'll show you some of those, or they could answer a question card. If they answered a question card, they got a resource, and then after that, they moved around the map. They could trade with each other, and they could also give public relation announcements. They could do policy, and all of this people would respond to on social media. So, so then during the game, I would flip between that stats page and the map, and they would, country by country, decide where they wanted to move. So previously I mentioned, so we have a configuration here, which is from, I think, game 5-ish or 6, I can't remember now, where from the statistics, and we knew this from the beginning, this piece of property belongs to Ramalia. So Ramalia owns the Arctic and goes around the planet and owns this land. But the food on this land belongs to Coraco. Coraco's been selling this food. So they've been farming on Ramalian land. And this became a dispute, and they looked for allies, and Valance allied with Coraco, and Dodo allied with Ramalia, and Unia also allied with Coraco, somewhat less enthusiastically. And we had a situation where it could have gone to war. I made a war board just in case, and I received this amazing letter from the King of Ramalia. So this came to the Orphan General through our social media site, asking me to intervene, to recognize the land as Ramalian land and to dispute Coraco's claim to the land, et cetera, et cetera. This is my response, which I gave in character, saying that the previous several orphan generals ago had decided that it would have to be decided through arms. I mean, so if they were unable to peacefully resolve it themselves, we would not step in. But that we would give them reasonable interest rates. The World Bank would give them reasonable interest rates on the purchase of weapons. So I gave the banker a right to sell weapons in behind the scenes deals to anybody. To the disappointment of some, they resolved this without war. So that one went without war. So, and this is the last app that I used. So behind the scenes here, you see all these thousands of cards. And I could have just randomized them and picked them, but it wasn't in the spirit of online. They couldn't see me do that. They might have thought I was strategically picking events. So I just quick wrote a little program in Inform 7, which is the programming language that I teach interactive fiction with. And I just quick randomized all the special events that they wrote. These are 2 events that never occurred. I just ran the program and it tossed up two sorts of events, but you can see how it worked. Valance debuts new clothing line, culturally appropriates the festival clothes of desert people. Opposition party goes up by 10%, majority party goes down by 10%. So they manipulate both industry and government. Okay, so these are some of the events that happened and some of the responses that came on social media. Baby Chewbacca meme fills the hearts of many. Ruling party support goes up everywhere. Opposition goes down. Global mood is calm. And then immediately my students start creating, Baby Chewbacca memes on the social media website. And then this was another one that a scandal says that Dodo, which is the only producer of gems on the whole planet, says they're fake. And then the claim that Coraco is making them. So this was a big disputed thing and lots of yelling at each other and lots of use of rhetorical manipulation to troll each other. And then this middle one became a more important sort of geopolitically. Unia had a fundraiser on behalf of Valance's underprivileged children, which caused trolls to start attacking Valance in terms of its abuse of children, which really over the months really grew out of control, the attack of Valance on that. All right, so at some point, Valance had to sort of step in and say, this is ridiculous. We're not abusing children and eventually, sort of eating children's fingers of orphan slave labor. It got really out of control and crazy, very fun, just what I wanted it to do. And then the king, so the opposition in Valance was king in exile. So it's a sort of a liberal capitalist system in Valance, but the king was still out there. And then rumor had it that he was imprisoned, even though Valance said that they invited him home, et cetera, et cetera. The opposition was rallying around the king. So we had a lot of politics here. So, this is what I referred to before, that minority support went up and down based on events. We kept track of how much money they had. They got every round, they get money, income from their resources. And then this is Joe's behind the scene. This is the World Banker's account. He kept his own accounts. We didn't know who had money or what, but these are in the millions, so 69 million lerthos, but they had in offshore money. Each country had way more money in offshore funds. Dodo has an offshore banking industry as well. The World Bank had an endless amount of money. And you see that by the end of the game, some of them spent down their offshore money. For what, you may ask? Well, as events unfolded, most of them random and some of them chosen by the countries, an election was triggered in Valance. So the rules said that if opposition support went up over 50%, it triggered an election. So how we handled the election was that each of the ruling party and the opposition posted on the MyLearth account, and we did it by likes. There are only 22 people in the class, but you see that this post got 28 likes. So that tells you something, that there were, every country also had multiple fake accounts as well. So the opposition won, but the majority of Valance decided to contest the election. And since they had all been buying weapons illegally, they had the weapons to fight. So we got to have our fight. So this is the war map of Valance, and I see that I'm out of time. So I'm gonna really quick whip over to the actual, because you wanna know what it sounded like. I can actually take you to hear some of the gameplay, and then I'll stop. So where are we here? Hang on, I have floating controls here. All right, so so this is the war while it was well in play. So these are all weapons. And how war is supposed to work is that it was sudden death answering questions. They would answer questions from the hard deck. We had divided the cards into hard and easy questions. And if they got one wrong, their army just lost. And that was supposed to be, and let me just let you hear some of this.
No.
Correct. on.
What is Umberto Eco's concept of hyperreality as described by...
Oh, I asked that one.
Oh, shoot. Really? Okay. What is the purpose of raising capital according to Benjamin Franklin? And why is American style rational or rationality... Actually, hold on. This card was phrased in a really weird way. So what's the purpose of raising capital according to Benjamin Franklin?
I'm going to default on that one.
Actually, no, I still don't like that question. I don't like the way it's phrased.
So the woman who's speaking is a game master, and she has the right to change the rules.
Name a couple of ways that consumer data is collected online.
So she threw out the question and asked another.
It's collected through like clicking in advertisements, the way that people interact with websites, and comments like on social media.
Yeah.
And okay.
Please explain to me what is conspicuous consumption.
Okay, so so they kept getting, hang on a second. They kept getting everything right, and they got everything right so much that the game masters decided, because time was running out and this was our last game, that we were going to go to dice. So I have this nice Dungeons and Dragons dice roller, and we started to roll the dice just to lose some armies because they were so well prepared. They got literally no questions wrong as we were trying to fight, and we weren't going to have a resolution of the battle. So we rolled dice, and we removed, I'm just whipping through the class period here. It was super exciting, but the other countries of the world wanted to get into the fighting. Sorry, I often had to switch to the dice. Until we were left with something like this. Coraco got into the fighting as well. And it looked something like this towards the end because Ramalia decided to invade Coraco. And it looked like it's drawn, we have to resolve the Valensian War. Dodo, are you staying?
They only have like a few armies left, so we'll stay. And,
all right, let's, instead of letting the opposition fight, Dodo is gonna try to take out the government of Valance here on behalf of the opposition. Can all be over except we have to resolve the other one. I'm going to a 4.
It's like 12 to 4 or something.
Yeah. So you are fighting the government of Valance currently. And the government of Valance falls. Dodo, are you fighting the opposition to take over Valance, or are you going to?
Close to Dodo that we join forces and take over the rest of the world, and then they'll probably just take over us, but you know.
So Dodo, you confer whether you're going to recognize the opposition of Valance as legitimate while I fight it out with Coraco up here and Ramalia.
Take control.
Okay.
We'll respect that too.
All right, so what happened is Coraco took over Ramalia. That was never the intent of the war, but it happened. And at this point, it looked like the opposition had beat out the original country. But then something untoward occurred. If I can quickly get back, that's not my PowerPoint. The orphan general had received a letter in the middle of the night before the battle, by a citizen of Valance, letting me know that in fact the king of Valance would not be returned to the throne, but would be a puppet. And she requested, she was a spy for Valance, to buy additional arms on behalf of the king of Valance. She told no one that she was doing this, she just did it. And at this point, can I get back to the right thing here? Let me see it.
Dr. Pentar, I believe that there might be more forces in Valance that we don't know about yet.
Yes. Unexpectedly, there has been a fissure in the opposition. And an additional army has arisen. with
Yes, I believe you'll find that our numbers are quite vast.
their numbers are vast.
I would like to attack
our
opposition.
Yes. I think that this is inevitable here, even without rolling. We, Winter party has arisen and has toppled the government.
Yes, I would like to found a new government in Valance.
Okay, so it was a very exciting finish at the end of the course. The king of Valance was returned from his tower where he was enshrined. We had a new kingdom like that. And now at the end of the semester, the students are finishing up their disinformation reports. And of course, as any good course should, they are demonstrating to me that they have mastered the material. So their disinformation plans moving forward in this world, in its new political world, are specific to what's happening. They're enjoying that assignment as far as I can tell, and we're zooming toward the end. So I'm sorry to have talked too long. We can shift back now to, that's the end. Now we're here on Q&A.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I now know more of Dodo than
Well, here I am. I'm at the Orphan General's hut here on Dodo here answering your
right.
questions.
So we started this conversation and you told me that that was Dodo, and I was curious to learn, and now I know. As we said at the beginning, please do submit questions for the speaker in the chat room, and I'm happy to share them and solicit answers. I think there was already a comment at a certain point. I think people wanted to know if it's possible to have the URL for the Wiki page.
The Wiki is currently a private Wiki for the course, but as soon as the semester is over and I can remove any sensitive material that has to do with the students' progress, I can make much of the Wiki public. So I will plan to do that, but I can't at the moment.
Thank
because
you.
it's like their Moodle site, and yeah.
I think our first question is a little bit of a meta question, I guess. I don't know if you can answer this, but it's an interesting one, and it's a question about what kind of role playing would you recommend to teach about role playing? So
Yes. Well, I said it as a challenge that I could come up with a role-playing scenario for anything. Well, as luck would have it, I teach game design, so I would make my students be teachers of game design. So I would put them in my own role and have them teach. Right. That maybe is a little bit of a cheaty one.
Right. But again, I think the question was a little bit a cheating one as well, right? I mean, you teach about role playing by making people do role playing, but I do have perhaps a question. So you said that there is no downside to teaching classes this way, but can I push you a little bit on this and imagine instead that whenever we adopt any technique, there is something we gain and something we lose. So without assuming that what we lose is more important than what we gain, what are the critical points, right? I mean, what is that can be lost, and what is, because we clearly see what can be gained, and use the word fun multiple times, which of course is emotionally very important. Are there any perhaps minor elements that you think are lost when we teach this way?
There's one really big one, which is that it takes really a lot of time. So if you're trying to teach your courses with a minimum amount of prep, even when I've taught, like I did several iterations of the role play in both the South Slavic class and the Intro to Eastern Europe class, there's new prep every time, because some of it is specific to the students and the content and new content in the course. So there was a tremendous amount of work, many long nights, all-nighters on getting this prepared. And then obviously if I wanted to fully engage them, if I wanted them to be fully engaged, I had to engage. So when they would write letters to the Orphan General, the Orphan General had to be a person. So I mean, I had to engage. So there are some courses that we don't want to engage with, we just want to do our job, right? So then we teach too many courses. We can't emotionally engage with all of them, or we feel the material doesn't lend itself to that. Although I think for myself, I proved in the global health governance class, which was not a course I had ever taught. I was asked to teach it. I got the materials, the syllabus was written, and I was thinking, how will I survive this material? To me, it was very dry. I could just teach it. It would have been easier just to teach the existing syllabus. And I thought, no, this is a challenge for me. This is material about really terrible things happening in the world, but I had experience teaching terrible things from teaching all these Balkans courses. So I wasn't afraid of teaching difficult things and walking the line of making difficult traumatic things fun, right? So I did say it was fun at multiple times. It was fun. We just had a hoot this semester, but the fun is not the main point of it. The engagement is. So you could do this in a serious game where the simulation is more serious and less fun and get the same benefits of that sort of immersion, the immersion in the material. The output of that at the end wouldn't necessarily be fun.
Right. So there is a question about, again, linking what you teach with courses that have a similar topic or similar interest in terms of propaganda assessment and other forms of research on propaganda. Do you know if the students are somehow creating meaningful synergies between other forms of data gathering and your class?
Absolutely. So their blogs, as I mentioned, that they're doing this series of blogs. Their blogs are all informed by their ability to now, they have a literacy for disinformation. They have a literacy for rhetorical manipulation. And I actually practiced them on it. When I said that they raised money, how they raised money was I gave them 35 rhetorical manipulations and I said, go into the headlines and for every different rhetorical manipulation, you can find me an example of. And some of them cheated and just looked at the president's tweets and they got a gazillion just right off of his tweets. I said, you have to do more than the tweets. You need to go on to Facebook and lots of things and see how many examples of all these rhetorical manipulations you can find from all these domains. I think it made us all sensitive to how manipulative advertising is and PR is. So even ordinary PR, even positive PR, that the same manipulative techniques, I think that surprised all of us as we started to just see manipulation everywhere. We saw it, of course, in the ugly kinds, like the trolling and the, attempt at interference, but we saw it in a lot of other passive ways as well. So they were so sensitive to doing that. And then they had that lens, that sensitivity, and then they went to their chosen topic area, which were very broad, as you recall, from that list of the things that they were looking at. So some of them are looking at the way that alt-right rhetoric against migration has been changing. And then they saw how the virus has emboldened various alt-right movements to sharpen certain of their narratives. And so a lot of the data they collected was qualitative in nature, but some of it is quantitative. And I really would like to make these blogs publicly available because the data they collected is quite exceptional and interesting. They were looking at the way that left and right shaped certain things that came into the news, not just the virus. Somebody was watching, you know, the old political debates around impeachment and what happened to them when they sort of left the headlines for all these virus headlines, what actually was happening behind. So a lot of the students kept their eye on the thing they had been looking at before, and then that itself is interesting to see how some of these media narratives shifted with this big new news story coming in the front, and then several of the students just went straight at a virus coverage from a variety of angles. So I would say that they did, despite that we were playing and having fun, that there was no downside in terms of their learning or their mastery. And in fact, seriously, I would put my form of cognitive learning against sort of memorization and testing at any time. Not only did they sort of learn the material, they used it, they applied it. They looked for it and then they used it. They did these techniques, and they're going to remember them and know them in a way that just memorizing them and giving them back on an exam wouldn't give. I used to say that at my Introduction to Eastern Europe students as well, is like, if you think that they didn't learn the material for having played it or embodied it or lived it, you know, just I'll put my students up against, on a test against any other students anywhere else teaching, you know, taking Introduction to Eastern Europe, right, in terms of what they learned.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions that I think I can group together about how to scale this approach for students in high school, or shortcuts that people can use taking advantage of your experience in organizing a course like this, right? So as you mentioned, time these are time consuming, and somebody in the chat room says that, again, that the complex nature of the game seems to be out of reach for the students of the classes the person teaches. Is there a way to further scale it to people who don't have as much time, and people are teaching different grades?
For sure. And I knew I would hear that from people, that this is sort of terrifying. Like, it's neat and then terrifying and you couldn't possibly do it. But it would never have been this complex in the classroom, right? It was really simple in the classroom. But the other role-playing things I've done in earlier classes were even simpler yet. So if you've ever heard a talk by any of the people in the history department who do the reacting to the past role-playing games, those are, and if you're unfamiliar with it, you should do a internet search on it. Reacting to the past is the phrase, and it's almost a social movement across history departments across the country, which are teaching history through role play. And it's a model in which students take the role of a historical figure. It's writing intensive. Where they have to, reading and writing intensive, they have to write speeches, they have to give speeches. I've done several reacting to the past workshops when they offer them here every year or so. Our history department offers them. And instead of borrowing the whole reacting to the past model, which is very labor intensive, and they'll tell you that, I called it role-playing light. It's role-playing light. And you just add a veneer to what the students are already doing. So let's say, for example, you're in a STEM kind of class where the students are in groups trying to design a thing. And that seems not amenable to a role play. Well, you just concoct a narrative storyline of an emergency and you ask them to create a character not themselves, that has certain sensibilities and thoughts and feelings on the team. And they're still doing the exact same project and they're working together, only there's this extra veneer of, how can we say, self-awareness. And you can put an ethical thing in there. You can say, okay, you guys are all working on this thing, but here is a piece of research which may have been ethically, it's a key piece that they need for their project, but it was got through unethical means. Is your group going to use it or not? And make that decision based on your character, not your own self. So if you yourself would never do that, but your character would, your group can go ahead and use it, right? So this is a very little game-like element, which doesn't change the essentials of what they're learning, what they're making, what they're producing, but engages them, engages the storytelling part of their brain, the narrative part of their brain, to just be a little more fully immersed in the material. I think I've talked to CITL about doing a workshop where we would actually ask people to come in and bring their syllabi. And we would collectively look at them and see where there were opportunities for adding narrative elements that would be not as complicated as this whole thing that I did, right? But just a way to start. So I think probably we will do something like that.
Okay. There are, of course, a lot of compliments in the chat room that I'm not going to repeat, but they are there for you to look at. I think we have been going at this for 1 hour and 10 minutes, so I think you deserve some time for yourself after spending so much time designing the course and helping us understanding your method. We're very grateful. Thank you so much. If you have final remarks, otherwise, again, I hope to see at least some of you back on Wednesday, and I'm sure that there will be other opportunities. We will post the presentation on our website, so do not hesitate to go back and look at things. And sometimes, again, during the presentation, it's hard to follow, but then you have an idea and you want to check something. So this will be available for people to do a double take and for other people. So if you know of anybody who might be interested in this, I think certainly the students are having a lot of fun, and that's very important. So we also had a lot of fun, and thank you so much, Judith Pinter, for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much for having me. People should feel free to email me as well with questions or thoughts. My email is just jpintar@Illinois. Feel free. And I'm always excited to talk about this particular topic. So thank you, Emmanuel, very much for having me. It was really fun.